extremely forbidden romances, weird plots, and sexy symbiotes? Just some of the amazing things we have in store for you on this list. Oh boy. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. It's me, Amanda. I have named all these points after quotes taken from the issues involving them. So see if you can guess which series, stories, or perhaps even specific issues I am talking about before I reveal them, and let me know how you did in the comments. Number 10. Professor Xavier is a jerk. While actually kind of juvenile in terms of its context, Kitty Pryde's famous splash page line in issue 168 of Uncanny X-Men has actually been pointed to multiple times for many different reasons. Turns out in a lot of ways that she didn't yet know, Kate was really right. But for this issue, the context of Kitty calling Professor X a jerk actually has to do with the fact that he decided to move her onto his training team, the New Mutants, instead of keeping her on the X-Men. Illyana, aka Magic, however, is quick to give Kitty some insightful perspective after listening to her rant for days on end. Illyana tells Kitty as her friend that she does feel that Kitty is overreacting and literally proving Xavier's point by being so childish in response to his judgment. She also reminds Kitty that while she is constantly bemoaning and complaining, that Illyana herself has had it way worse, having been trapped in limbo for most of her childhood. Suddenly feeling guilty for constantly complaining to Illyana, who definitely has more reason to complain than Kitty does, Kitty apologizes before the two head off to take the bus into town so they can attend dancing lessons. So cute. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love really weird moments in comics that make us go, huh? Or ah? Then be sure to show us you love us by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9. Hulk, make me a sandwich. In Avengers Assemble issue number 9, Iron Man and Bruce Banner make a bet as to who can investigate the goings-on of a Russian research camp up in Antarctica. When Spider-Woman is asked to join Tony's team, she decides instead to team up with the Hulk. This is because Spider-Woman feels it will actually be safer for everyone for her to team up with the Hulk, who she claims she can control thanks to her pheromone powers. To prove the power of her potential influence over the Hulk, she then tells him to make her a sandwich, which he does, although honestly, I feel like if Jess just asked the Hulk to make her a sandwich, he probably would. He's usually pretty nice when he's not angry. I feel like this quote is pretty easily explainable here. When they end up going to the Arctic, the hilarious thing is that the Hulk is, as Bruce Banner stated earlier, unaffected by the cold. But Jessica, as Spider-Woman, is of course freezing. Probably also because most spider people tend to have a weakness to the cold, and I think Jess is one of the spider people that's included on that list. Because spiders, they do not like the cold. Number 8. So the puppies worked. How do you defeat the Hulk when he won't stop rampaging? How about with adorable puppies? A whole crate full of them. That was the plan in the Indestructible Hulk special. In order to subdue the Hulk after he has finished his mission, turning him back into Bruce Banner, S.H.I.E.L.D. decides to deploy a crate full of puppies, leaving it within Hulk's field of vision. He approaches, opens it, and success! Bruce later says this quote after he is back to himself, as the puppies were actually his idea. So, the puppies worked. Number 7. I've got to touch his fur! This one is mainly just extremely entertaining for me. It involves everyone's favorite bouncing blue Beast. This was after Beast had joined up with the Avengers during a time he was actually sadly feeling pretty useless as a teammate. Poor Beast. Beast goes out to grab a dozen hot dogs from a street vendor, as you do. Used to people running in terror, he is a mutant after all, and also now looks like a literal beast. He is not surprised when the vendor sees him and runs off, simply asking, "Smatter, never seen a blue furry freak before?" However, what happens next does surprise him, as the women who are also near the vendor do recognize him as a member of the Avengers, the superhero the Beast, and begin to mob him, not out of hate or revulsion, but out of awe and seemingly love? One woman remarks, "Been dying to meet you." Another we overhear in the midst of saying, "Turns me on," while one more is heard calling out, "I've gotta touch his fur." And this quote comes to us from Avengers issue number 164. Number 6. And people say I have no sense of humor. Wolverine ends up getting steamrolled by the Punisher in their team up, where Punisher turns on him after the Punisher decides the Wolverine will only get in the way, seemingly marking him as somewhat of a loose cannon. Though really, this comic was more about the constant battle between the two in regards to like, who is the tougher guy, Wolverine or the Punisher. And Wolverine honestly would attempt to get back at the Punisher in one of the worst and weirdest ways later, but that's a story for another point and maybe another list. Punisher turns on Wolverine and not only steamrolls him, but also shoots him a bunch prior to that and leaves him to have his legs sawed off. Though obviously with Wolverine, that's not an easy feat thanks to his adamantium skeleton. This quote in the point comes from Frank in the aforementioned issue, which is issue number 17 of the early 2000s Punisher series, and it's something he thinks after he has steamrolled Wolverine, calling him Pine Martin before leaving him there, in reference to one of Canada's most ferocious but also cutest mammals. And smallest, I believe. And people say I have no sense of humor. I would still say that, because I feel like that joke's a little weak, Frank, but I'm not gonna say that to Frank's face, but you know, I'm thinking it. Number 5. I can see things differently. Well, we may now know that the Hulk is immortal, as was confirmed in Immortal Hulk. Before we knew that, Bruce was confirmed as being killed and dead. Also, it has been said before that although Hulk is immortal, Bruce Banner isn't. This all went down during Civil War II. What a strange event in and of itself. Clint Barton was under the impression that Bruce Banner was about to transform after a collection of heroes had shown up to accost him for basically potential future crimes he might commit as Hulk. We later learned that Clint had promised Bruce to take him out if he was ever going to transform into Hulk again. In fact, Bruce even presented Clint with the ammo needed to successfully deal the kill shot with his bow. The interrogation of Clint in Civil War II, issue number 3, also has one of my favorite lines. When questioned about how Bruce had not yet transformed and why Clint even fired in the first place, he responds, "I see things differently. My sight is more acute. It's why I'm such a good shot." What does that mean? Clint has super sight, confirmed. Number 4. Interdimensional Apertures. Cyclops' powers aren't that weird, as long as you don't think too much about it. Most people would likely assume that Scott Summers has lasers for eyes, which might have been true if we hadn't gotten an in-depth explanation on how his powers work. Currently in the comics, Scott's optic blasts actually are tied to energy absorption and manipulation, with Scott absorbing radiant energy from all around him and it basically being channeled straight through his eyeballs, although the rest of his body is somehow immune to its effects, with even his eyelids acting as a sufficient shield for this massive source of energy. However, before that, Cyclops' powers were actually explained as being portals to another dimension that was filled with unlimited energy. Yeah, that's where the quote in this point comes from. Cyclops' entry in the official handbook of the Marvel Universe from 1983, before it was changed to then be it's their portals, but also it's the energy absorption, and now I think we're just on energy absorption, but mostly we just don't talk about it. Number 3. Just a nibble. This is a weird thing that really has roots in the comics, as crazy as that might sound. In New Avengers Annual number 3, Clint Barton ends up being apprehended by the Dark Avengers, which honestly probably couldn't come at a worse time for him. At this point in the story, Clint Barton, usually known as Hawkeye but currently known as Ronin, decided to try and expose Norman Osborn, the then head of Hammer, which had replaced S.H.I.E.L.D. and leader of his own Dark Avengers, for the monster that he is. When that failed, Clint abandoned his own team to try and take Norman out by himself. Unfortunately for Clint, this failed and he ended up captured by the Dark Avengers. Norman decides to question Clint, but first, of course, he must strip him down and tie him to a chair. Then he uses his version of Spider-Man, who is really Mac Gargan bonded with the Venom symbiote, to threaten the life of Clint, but of course, it kind of in a weirdly sexy way. Oh boy. Hence where this ship comes from. It's a weird ship. Something that had actually happened in the comics. Why is Venom always weirdly sexy? Why is that a thing? The line in this point comes from a command Norman gives to Mac during the interrogation when Venom bites Clint. Just a nibble, he says. Which is also a weirdly sexy way to be like, yeah, take a chunk out of his shoulder. Number 2. It's more than that. They're in love. I still can't believe we let this one happen. If you're new to the channel and to comics, this may shock you. But if you've been around for a while, you perhaps already know where I'm headed with this one. This is a strange romance and occurrence that we've brought up before on the channel, but I always feel like if I leave it off a list like this, someone in the comments is going to be unable to believe that I did not mention it. So here we go again. In the Ultimate Universe, the Earth of 1610, things are a lot different than the main continuity. The Ultimate line, starting with Ultimate Spider-Man, was created to bring something new to the world of Marvel Comics, in the hopes that shaking up and simplifying the continuity with a new main reality, or an alternative to the main reality, would result in an influx of readers. And it worked! But at what cost? At what cost? Many of the characters and stories told were both updated to the modern day, but also made to be a bit more edgy. Included in this weird revitalization were Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, the brother and sister duo often associated with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and later the Avengers. The siblings in the main continuity have always been close, but in the Ultimate Universe, they were a lot closer. Like, incestuously so. The quote for this point comes from Ultimates 3, issue number 1, where Janet attempts to explain to Captain America the kind of love that exists between Pietro and Wanda. Number 1. The subtle manipulations of my father's ingenious machines. Oh, where to even start with this one? I'm gonna try and summarize, because if I just let myself rant here, this video will be extremely long. I could do like a whole video on just this one point, and maybe I should. Attempting to explain this weirdness, anyone? Carol at one point seems to become miraculously pregnant. Rather than be concerned, like Carol is, the rest of the Avengers seem more excited about this really unexpected bundle to be delivered. Really unexpected, because Carol Danvers, she wasn't pregnant like a day ago, and now she's real pregnant. Janet Van Dyne at one point even implies that Carol's reaction is all wrong. She should be happy about this. After all, she gets to have a kid, and isn't that the best thing ever? Carol's like, I don't want this. Carol delivers the baby only for it to rapidly grow up, naming himself Marcus Immortus, as in the son of Immortus, aka a split-off timeline version of Kang the Conqueror. He reveals that Carol reminds him of his mom, kinda weird, and that he wants to take her away because he's in love with her. Super weird. And then the Avengers kinda just let Carol go with him. Oh, and we also learned that Marcus kidnapped Carol and was the one to impregnate her in order to use her body to escape the dimension he was trapped in and then journey to Earth, because then he could be reborn there and then it would be cool. But it didn't work because everything went weird. So she literally gave birth to her own offender. Yikes. The quote from this one is from issue number 200 of the Avengers, when Marcus explains how his father seduced his mother years ago, who happened to look just like Carol, which is also super weird. That's all the time we have for today, but I have a lot more unbelievable moments for anyone who's interested in a part 2, so let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.